When the Liberal Party get hammered in the polls because they fuck up so much on the substantive issues the Australian public finally managed to see through, blue equals competent and calm like water, red equals alarmed and scary like the colour of blood! The Libs tend to return to the one refuge that's safe territory for them, the culture war, in the hope that enough Aussies think, I do like functioning public hospitals, but everything has gotten too woke. And despite their colour, the Liberals do seem a little more red-pilled, if I do say so myself. But when the Libs fuck up something as simple as, okay, we'll only give JobKeeper to companies that needed to keep their employees paid, and well, I can't really be charged for the money back. This paraplegic, on the other hand, mate, if you can survive without your legs, surely we can amputate some of your funding. What makes you think the Liberals could competently fight a culture war? Because here's something the Hills might find hard to swallow. They can't. The Liberals are so incompetent they get KO'd in the same culture wars they start. Take the latest crusade, the Religious Freedom Bill, a bill aimed at winning over the based Christian section of the populace by kind of allowing the Libs to posture and dog whistle a lot about Israel Folau. Which, to be fair, I don't think Rugby Australia should have fired Israel for whatever he said. It's a complex situation and I'm not sure what they should have done, but I do hear a lot of smart people recommending a two-state solution. Either that or something about 1967 borders. But the Religious Freedom Bill will do none of that. You think Hamas is bad? The Liberals are worse. If their bill passes, Rugby Australia would still have the right to fire Israel. This bill is nothing more than a cheap, dangerous, myopic election ploy. You know why it's dangerous? It's very easy to forget if you live in the rich cultural capital of Christianity in Australia, the Hills. The Christianity, you know, the nice religion everyone normal practices, well, it isn't the only religion in Australia. In fact, it's dying. You know what the fastest growing religion in Australia is? Hinduism. Okay, well, sorry, that's not scary enough for me to fearmonger on. Unless... You know what the second fastest growing religion in Australia is? Islam. Nice work, Libs. You already got a cell phone. You're being nice to Muslims. Don't you Libs hate that? Isn't that electoral poison, Scott? Didn't you urge your colleagues to exploit fears about Muslims as an electoral strategy? And now as Prime Minister, you're giving them more freedoms. Another broken Liberal promise. But for real, if you know me, you'd know I have a lot of sympathies for Islam. I like the charity Muslims pay. I like the fact that the Islamic banking system forbids interest as it's seen as exploitative. I like that you don't drink alcohol. I like the funny hats they wear. And I really like that they don't dress like they're out of a Kmart commercial and then go on to hold bizarrely massive music festivals that breach COVID rules. Also, kids with strangely milky skin can sing questionably homoerotic songs about the blood of Jesus. So yeah, as much as I'm fucking livid about Erdogan turning the Hagia Sophia into a mosque, I'd be more than happy if we chucked up some minarets on the Hillsong Stadium and hollowed out a wall to face Mecca. But unfortunately, the more moderate centres of Islam don't have the cash and the power to make that happen, and thus, if we wanted to fulfill my dream of an expansionary jihad against Hillsong, you'd have to call up this guy. That's King Salman, the King of Saudi Arabia, the cash cow of the Islamic world. From their oil wealth and claim to Islam's two holiest cities, the Saudis project great cultural power around the Islamic world, funding institutions and propping up governments that back both their geopolitical strategic interests and religious, let's just say idiosyncrasies. They essentially follow a version of Islam that stems from a theologian from the 1700s called Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. This guy was kind of the Greta Van Fleet of Islamic theologians. Just how Greta Van Fleet claimed to want to bring rock back to its roots, but instead created some god-awful bastardized mutation that for some reason resonated with way too many people. That's what al-Wahhab did to Islam. This doctrine is now kind of unofficially labelled Wahhabism. Very bluntly, Wahhabism rejects a lot of Islamic traditions and interpretations of the Quran and embraces a hardline, literal interpretation of the Quran. And when there's no explicit instructions in the Quran on what to do, clerics recommend a cautious approach.
Your daughter wants to ride scooter. Can you guarantee that she'll always be riding towards Mecca? No?
How this version of Islam became so dominant is essentially al-Wahhab and his descendants, the al-Sheikh family, have had a power-sharing agreement with the Al Saud family, the Saudi royal family. The Sauds back the al-Sheikhs with their political and military might, and the al-Sheikhs give the Sauds the religious authority to rule. Still, For years, Wahhabism was pretty fringe. Then oil was found in Saudi Arabia and, you've seen the Saudi royal family, right?
Maizu, like a Michael Jackson, yes?
So they use it to spread this insane interpretation of Islam around the world. Saudi Arabia has pumped at least $120 million into Australia since the 1970s, funding mosques, schools, clerics, charities, scooter warehouses.
No, halal! Private Sunnah! Look at Jeddah, halal as fuck!
And now this is a very long way of explaining that the main beneficiaries of Scott Morrison's Religious Freedom Bill are not going to be Christians, Hindus, or ordinary Muslims. No. The main beneficiaries are going to be religious sects extreme enough to actually need a new law that prevents other laws from moderating some of their religious practices. And I think that's going to be the Saudi-backed, hardline Islamic institutions that are now operating in Australia. Just take this example given by the Public Interest Advocacy Centre of a religious freedom the bill will protect. A student attends the same religious school throughout their primary and secondary education. At 16, they lose faith in the religion of the school and tell a teacher that they are now agnostic. The school would be able to expel, suspend, or otherwise punish, for example, give detention to the student. You know what the Wahhabists call losing your religion? No, not a fantastic song by R.E.M. that proves mandolin can indeed be used in rock and roll. They call it apostasy. Meaning that if Scott Morrison gets his way, part taxpayer-funded, part Saudi king-funded Islamic schools operating on your doorstep will be allowed to punish children for apostasy.
And we definitely don't do that shit already. Shut the f*** up!
Sorry, not just apostasy. The bill sets out that a religious school may require all its students to practice a certain religion, which means if an Islamic school with Saudi and your tax funding deems it fit, it could punish a student for playing with dolls or action figures because, under certain interpretations of Islam, that'd be idolatry, and that would mean the student is definitely not practicing Islam. How do you think this is going to play out on a whole new, larger generation of Muslim youth? Especially considering that the Liberals have a proven track record of funding radicalisation in schools. Howard brought in the National School Chaplaincy Program, which forced into schools that really should have been secular religious representatives, not all of whom Howard would have been that into. In 2014, Tony Abbott reformed the school chaplain program, attempting to make the program even more religious. And who'd have guessed? Forcing religious figures into state schools didn't really help foster a culture of religious tolerance. The father of Mehmet Bieber, a man who in 2013 went to fight for jihadist organisation Al-Sham, directly blames the fact that Parramatta High School was a religious hothouse for his son's radicalisation. He said, visiting mullahs and prayer groups and school-employed emirs were a constant feature of education there, all of them, it seemed, legitimising a strain of Sunni fundamentalism. And that strain of Sunni fundamentalism is the strain the Saudis are funding, both here in Australia in the school of Mehmet Bieber, and in Syria supporting the very group Mehmet went to fight with. Mehmet's father even believes his son was made to feel embarrassed about his Alawite heritage, a Shia ethno-religious group that would face a lot of real religious discrimination from the Saudi-backed Sunni culture that the Liberals have encouraged. The plus side of all this is, though, that it is really funny to think of John Howard as an Islamic fundamentalist.
I found the tax on Christians and Jews to be more than enough of a supplement for the revenue lost for reducing the capital gains tax. Like I always said, a broad-based religious tax is far more effective than taxing income.
What I've just mentioned is one aspect of the bill that's insane. The other is what Neil Kolhatkar pointed out. The wording of the bill is so nebulous that it's going to be open to a raft of abuses. You know who gets to decide what is and isn't discrimination? The new Religious Discrimination Commissioner. One person, a mufti, if you will, who can then issue fatwas on what is discrimination. Just like the E-Safety Commissioner, the Libs are going to leave it to one of their cronies to decide what speech is and isn't blasphemy. Is it just me, or is that nuts? Is this really the Australia we want to live in? We've gone 120 years without needing all these bureaucrats to police our social interactions, but now it's the only innovative thing that Scott Morrison can come up with in government. The new Water Cooler Chat Commissioner will ensure that workplace conversations are engaging, prompt, and not uncomfortable. Australians have the right to nice conversations without awkward pauses. If such an awkward pause occurs, they can then go report it to this ex-News Corp exec, who's the Water Cooler Chat Commissioner. Scotty from marketing? More like Scotty from HR. Come on, Who else thinks the Liberals shouldn't be enshrining more red tape that gives people the freedom to enforce radical religious ideologies and receive taxpayer money for it? Even if they do think it could help them win the next election. I mean, especially considering the fact that the other thing they're campaigning on is degrading your freedoms that actually matter. Your freedom of speech, expression, and ability to criticize the government. The freedom to make videos like this. I feel like that matters a lot more than the freedom of some Pentecostal principal to put a kid in detention because they didn't wear a bomber jacket like this that singles, yeah, I might be religious, but I'm also hip and down with it. That's a practice of theirs, isn't it? The direction Australia is heading in under Scott Morrison is f***ed. Continue to use your free speech to share this video with as many people as you know. It's up to you to ensure he doesn't get another term.
Please share and comment below. Comment.